So let's make our first sequence. I'm going to create a folder, call it underscore Eddie. You can see here under cinematic we have several choices, but we want the cine camera actor. Now let's place it. Turn on the rotate tool, spin it around. Zoom out so I can see a little better. Go to the move tool. I want to bring it all the way back. I want to see a bit of that bed in the shot. Now we're not going to mess with any lens settings or any post effects or anything. We're just going to move the camera and render it. And then after we do this first shot, I will do 2 more shots and then we'll see how to put all 3 shots together. And then after that, we'll add some post effects. That's starting to look like a decent position. All right, let's create a folder inside of the Eddie folder. We'll call it Maps. Go File, Save Current As. Go to the Maps directory. Let's call this single shot. You can see we've got it saved here. Now I'm going to click this down arrow, go to Layouts, and pick the 2 panes layout. Just slide it over. On the left pane, I'm going to pick Perspective, which is what we normally work in. And on the right pane, I'm going to pick Cinematic Viewport. All right, so I'm going to select the camera, hit F to focus on it, right click on it, and go to Pilot Cine Camera Actor 1. It's up there towards the top. Hotkey for that is Control Shift P, by the way. And that'll force us to look through the camera. Now I can click on this little arrow and it'll stop piloting the camera. You can also right click in the world outliner and do the same thing. So now we have a viewport looking through the camera. Let's make another folder, put it in the Eddie folder. Right click, go to new folder, call it Shots. Now let's go to the icon bar at the top of the screen here and go to the arrow that's to the right of cinematics and go Add Level Sequence. And we'll put it in the Shots folder inside of the Eddie folder. And I'll just call it sequence underscore 01, I believe. Now you can see the sequencer window at the bottom here. And if I go to the content browser, you'll see the little icon for the sequence. So now that we have the sequencer window open, we can start moving the camera. Now here, I'm going to make sure it's set at 30 frames per second. I'm going to set our start range and our start viewing range to 0. This is the start of the sequence and what you can see. And I'll do the same with the end of the viewing range and the sequence length. So I'm just setting this to 120 frames. And I'm telling it I want to see all 120 frames. Now let's grab the Cinecamera Actor 1 and drop it into the sequencer. You'll see immediately that it has all these options, things such as focal length, focal distance, aperture size, and the transform. Now, if you hit this little plus icon here, it's going to put a keyframe at frame 0, which is the little red dot. Now we can scrub the timeline with the left mouse button. Just click anywhere in the timeline and then drag with the left mouse button. And you can see nothing's happening because we only have one keyframe so far. All right, I'll just set this back to 120 here. So now that we're on frame 120 in the timeline, let's move the camera forward. And this looks like a good spot. And then hit the plus icon next to transform to set a keyframe. So now when we scrub the timeline, we're going to be able to see it moving the viewport. Now I'm going to open up the curve editor by clicking this icon. And we're going to change the movement in the X to linear. If I open the transform up here, you can see that we have location and then X, Y, and Z. And I just want to select the keys for the X values. And an option window will pop up, but I'm just going to use the icon for switching it to linear. And this just means that it's going to move evenly per frame, so an even distance per frame. Now I'll close the curve editor and hit play. And we have our sequence. And go back to the first frame. Now let's click the render movie icon. It's a little clapboard here. If you click on it with the left mouse button, you can see it's set to video sequence, 30 frames per second. We need to change the resolution to 1920 by 1080, which is what I'm recording at. I'll adjust the compression quality to say 90. You can click on it to get an exact value and type it in if you wish. Then we'll pick a folder. Go to output directory. And I'll just make a folder real quick. Call it underscore render. Put an underscore on each end. Select this folder. And now hit capture movie. Now it's going to ask me to save if there are parts of the scene I haven't saved yet, which is fine. And here's the screen as it's processing. You can see how quickly it renders. And now we're done with our first sequence. Now let's do 2 more shots for practice. Here's what we've done so far.